From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Logan's Run, released in 1976. Starring Michael York, Jenny Agutter, and Richard Jordan. Directed by Michael Anderson. The synopsis is, because of overpopulation and pollution, mankind is contained in a computer-controlled bubble city where their every whim is fulfilled as long as they follow the rule to live only to the age of 30. The story is based on the novel of the same name by William Francis Nolan at the age of 39 and George Clayton Johnson at the age of 38 in 1976. The original concept for the novel was that the world had been taken over by the youth and all of the citizens were terminated at the age of 21. The main character is an exterminator by the name of Logan 3, who decides to go against the rules and runs from his fate. For the time, it was a very unique concept. MGM got a whiff of this fascinating science fiction premise after the success of 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Planet of the Apes in 1968, putting producer John Powell on working to make this into a film as early as 1969. The project ultimately fell through because of George's conflicts with the budget and ideas presented by the screenwriter Richard Maibaum to incorporate contemporary social issues. After the financial success and popularity of Soylent Green in 1973 and Westworld also in 1973, MGM put producer Saul David to the task of making a science fiction film for the studio. He remembered Logan's Run, and the studio gave him the green light to make it into a film. Coincidentally, in 1973, Zardoz was released, where the story also follows an exterminator in a very youth-centric world. Michael Anderson was hired to direct, who was famous for directing Around the World in 80 Days in 1956. David Zelag Goodman was brought in to write the screenplay. They made significant changes to the story to the point that you could say that the film is not really an adaptation, but it is very loosely based on the ideas presented in the novel. Having read the book and seen the film, I would like to talk about all of the differences in great detail during the review. However, the rhythm of the story on screen of being an action-driven adventure held true to the book's flavor and pacing quite nicely. I thought that all of the changes made sense theatrically and brought more visual excitement for the medium of film. One huge change was the age of death that was changed from the age of 21 to 30. This made so much more sense to me. It seemed that 21 was an age when things were just starting to get good for a person. And maybe your prime was at 25 or 30, and it seems a person could be in their prime at any age. But this was not the moral of the story. But I can't help but think that maybe it should have been. However, I understand that the book used the age of 21 to shock its readers and to imagine the concept of the question, what if the youth took over the world and it turned into a horrifying dystopia? Now, there was a strong mention of many of the characters carrying on grown-up activities that would be considered minors in the book. It's actually quite cringy when you think of it, and I wasn't really comfortable with that. Whereas in the film, by having the age adjusted, much of the adult references felt more organic. As well, the 20s is a decade for most people to explore and discover themselves. There was even a saying back in the 1960s and 70s, never trust anyone over the age of 30, mostly because they had been willing to do nefarious things to protect their standard of living past that point. So I really enjoyed the fact that the age was adjusted. However, it doesn't make the shock any less. The sheer concept of having an age limit or even knowing exactly when your point of death is to occur is a truly horrible thing to know. The mystery of that is what keeps us hopeful and growing. The visceral shock of age-gating life itself is truly a disturbing factor in this story, and it has been used in many films and TV shows since Logan's run. Another change is that the age gate is a worldwide acceptance in the book, which is highly unrealistic, I might add. It's much harder to regulate something like this globally. However, in the movie, it's only regulated to the domed city, where there is a containment and more control. No explanation is given to why the titular character Logan 3 became Logan 5 in the film, except for maybe it sounds cooler. However, it could indicate that Logan 5 is part of an alternative dimension or so far off into the future of the happenings in the books. I rather like that idea, actually, of it being a tale from a distant future because humanity failed to learn its lessons the first time, that history just keeps repeating itself. Therefore, we can preserve both timelines of the book and the film in complete tact. The script for the film was maybe just a tad too on the nose at times and written with a 1970s sensibility. Dialogue is one of the key cornerstones of a movie becoming a time capsule, which this is, both fortunately and unfortunately. However, during the moments of improvisation between the actors, the dialogue is a massive artifact of intrigue and deeper purpose. Now to the pacing. At an hour and 59 minutes, I loved every minute of this film, but I must admit, it is way too long. There are so many adventures and story twists packed into the film that it needed to tell the tale the way it did. The longest feeling segment of time was in the beginning, where the film needed to set up the world and tell us what normal life was for the inhabitants of the dome. But I assure you, every single minute of this movie means something to the story. Now the challenge. The challenge in the film is the proposed world of Logan's Run, where we have the beautiful futuristic city, but a horrible rule to die at 30. Boy, that sucks. You're just figuring out things about life and then bam, your time is up. It's a horrible thought, because life is so precious. And I know so many people who died before they even got to be 20. And it's just horrible that this society theorized that it was better to do this to control population and pollution instead of finding other, more humane solutions. When I first viewed the film, I thought maybe this city was in space or on some other planet, but this is indeed planet Earth in the year 2274. I'll just set up the society for you really quickly before we get into the meat and potatoes of this review. The society of this world is really interesting. It's a hedonistic pleasure zone for their citizens to do anything they please. Each child is born with a clear crystal flower life clock. After a year to the 15th year, the crystal is yellow. From 16 to 24, it's green. And from 25 to 30, it's red. The life clock blinks when you're close to death day, or what they call last day. In the book, last day is a day all of the citizens know is suicide, in a beautiful spiritual euthanization ceremony. The filmmakers probably didn't want to use that type of death in the film because it was used brilliantly in Soylent Green in 1973. In the film, the citizens know that they're going to die, but they falsely believe that they will be reborn, or what they call renewed. And the process is a big, elaborate event that is a daily spectacle at a place called Carousel, where last day citizens gather in a circle, soar into the air, and then explode. It's just crazy. Now, theatrically, Carousel was a great way to add yet another level of shock value to this monstrous act as the crowd goes wild cheering for the subjects to renew. This is clearly inspired by the ancient Roman Colosseums. Carousel is where all of the adults in the city gather for entertainment, daily socializing, and it reinforces the brainwashing belief of renewal among the masses. However, the truth is that there is no renewal for anyone. This is the main challenge in the film, and there's a computer that controls the entire city. In the book, it's called the Thinker. There are a few people in the society who are assigned jobs that want them. There are law enforcers called Sandmen. Sandmen are mainly responsible for tracking down and terminating people who decide to run from their fate on Carousel, and they are called runners. Cleaners is another job in the society, and the cleaners come to dissolve the dead bodies of the runners so that the public never sees it. Sandmen report their findings to the Thinker, and this perpetuates the situation generation after generation. Nearly everyone has been brought up into this cockamamie idea, including Logan 5, our protagonist, and it's a unsurmountable evil or an unsurmountable wrong. And I just love the setup for the story and its enormous challenge presented in the film for the characters. The empathy. The story focuses on Logan 5, a Sandman who is the model citizen with a few questions about how things are done in the city and renewal. Any doubt he has about this world is quickly brushed under the carpet as he and the other citizens get swept into renewal at Carousel. He drank the Kool-Aid and bought into the lie. As a Sandman, Logan lives a life of privilege in their lifestyles. They live like kings and they're looked up to for what they do. And something I hadn't recognized before is that Sandmen are actually intimidating to the citizens. People are actually afraid of them, and there's a sense of distrust between the Sandman and the citizens because to go against a Sandman means may be interpreted that you are a runner or that you're going to run. Logan's best friend Francis 7 even says that he can tell when a red is going to run. The film shows us how the Sandman brutally hunt down and torture runners. It's not just about terminating them, it's about invoking fear and really enjoying it. At one point they taunt a runner and purposely miss shooting him to horribly terrify him up until the very last moment of his life. It seems as if they find it all so very exciting. The Sandmen are truly horrible people. The runner Logan kills has an ankh in his possession, which the Thinker says is related to 1,056 missing runners and relates to a place called Sanctuary. He is given an order to penetrate the city seals by becoming a runner, find Sanctuary, and destroy it. This happens about 25 minutes into the story, but this is the main thing that thrusts the characters into action. Only at 26, Logan's 4 years of life has been forfeited for an early last day, therefore making him a runner. Logan isn't actually that likable, but when this happens, it feels as if there's an evening of the scales. It's still uncertain whether or not he's actually working for the Thinker or not. And I really like that ambiguity, giving us a good amount of mystery about what was going to happen next. There's a scene where Logan tries to talk to Francis 7 about what's going on, but Francis proves that he believes in the structure of his society to his own detriment. So Logan really can't confide in his friend. He's alone in all this. So desperately he asks a girl by the name of Jessica to help him after remembering that she wore a collar with an ankh attached, and also remembered that she questioned renewal. The ankh is not only a calling card, but it actually has a practical use as a key to open a door that leads to sanctuary. I actually love the fact that they use an ankh in this film because when I was younger, I was heavily into ancient Egypt and history. So the ankh, key of life, is the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic symbol that represents the word life. For the characters to have this key in the film means that they actually choose to live. It's something very subtle that you would have to know about the meaning of the word ankh in order to understand. Jessica is actually part of a hardy sub-community with common sense who do not believe that they will be renewed and who wants to live. They vow to help runners try to reach sanctuary, but they are very leery of Logan because Sandmen never run. And I think too that the fact that the Sandmen never run quote in this movie is a clue to the fact that Logan's fate is a little bit different than any other runner. It's almost like he's the chosen one. Logan's likability actually grows throughout the film, but only in proximity to Jessica, who is courageous and sacrifices everything to go with him on the journey. Why? We are never really told. It says, they just say that she likes him, so she wants to stay with him. And I kind of wish that there was more of a deeper exchange for her, like maybe she doesn't want to wait to run, or maybe she's just curious about sanctuary. In the book, Jessica is the twin sister of the runner that Logan terminates by the name of Doyle. Jessica is a runner too, and that's why she sticks with Logan. And I feel like that was a better setup. However, the movie stays very true to the book in the sense that Jessica and Logan become a couple after having gone through so much together. Their relationship grows because they are partners in this wild adventure that they have together, and they are looking out for each other. It's very sweet also how Logan tries to console Jessica whenever she's doubtful or having a hard time dealing with the circumstances. So when they go outside of the dome, they meet an old man in a very abandoned Washington, D.C., accompanied by 20 to 30 cats. I just love the look on Logan and Jessica's face when they see a cat run out through the doorway. It's just priceless because they have never seen a cat before. So I thought it was a very genuine and real moment. And these little details, they just tickle me every time I see this film. The old man is a wonderful character, bringing a sense of levity to the film that was much needed. However, because he has lived outside of the dome of the city all of his life, he has much to teach them about surviving on the outside. And he doesn't do it in a rough way. He does it very gently, almost within the conversation. He's teaching them very gently. And I loved his character and what he brought to the film to give it more color and gravity. All the while, Logan is being hunted by Francis, who has been left out of the adventure, pretty much trying to figure out what's going on with his friend. It's really sad because up until this whole fiasco where Logan becomes a runner, they were the best of friends, doing everything together. And I mean everything. They were really close, and Logan just abandoned Francis. So we're dealing with a very hurt young man who just wants his friend back, really. He's so angry because this whole thing has gone too far and he can't make this the way it used to be. It's very sad. Francis also represents the fear of change in the film. Those who will never stray from their programming because it keeps them safe from the unknown. He never believes the truth, even when the evidence is staring him in the face. It's a true tragedy. The technical aspects. The technical aspects is where the film really delivers this fantasy sci-fi on a silver platter to me. Okay? The city was one of those really incredible wonders of delight that was basically a group of incredibly designed miniatures. Do they look real? No, but they were better than anything that was around at the time for science fiction. Should that be enough? No, but I personally love the imagination given to the structures and the real moving rail system to boot. I loved it, and I'm not the only one, because this miniature city has been repurposed in many movies and television projects. The buildings in this miniature city structure was built at different scales based on their distance from the camera to give the model landscape a greater sense of depth. When I saw the movie, which I have reviewed on this channel, Things to Come, released in 1936, I couldn't help but notice the similarities to the design of the two cities and the use of holograms, which was used in this film. What a great movie to grab inspiration from. The production saved over $3 million by filming interior shots of the city in Texas. The buildings used were the Dallas Market Center, the World Trade Center, the Oz Restaurant and Nightclub, and the Zales Building. The waterfalls that were used at the end of the film were the water gardens in Fort Worth, Texas. One of the spectacles of the film were the costumes of the citizens in the dome. They were heavily inspired by ancient Roman fashions, and I think that the society was meant to replicate the excess of the ancient society. I mentioned that the carousel was very similar to the Colosseum. So costume designer Bill Thomas, who previously worked on Spartacus and received an Oscar for it, was perfect for the task. Many people immediately connect the designs as a calling card of the 1970s, and that's completely evident. And I also see hints of the late 1960s as well. The costumes were very flowy, but many of the dresses for the women were very short-hemmed mini dresses. Bill had the creative idea to use color to give the population the ability to identify their life clock ages visually. It's something that most people don't actually realize while watching the film, but the bright colors in the costumes are not a result of the 1970s influence, but it served as a function in the society within the film, matching the wearer's life clock color. It was a wonderful detail that has been overlooked by many. It left an incredible impression. The carousel sequence was a construct of the film, but it was also one of the most memorable scenes. A very complicated rig was designed in the ceiling of the set to rotate and pull up the stunt performers. All the while, a corresponding revolving floor was to create the spectacle. It was a disaster during the rehearsal, tangling the performers, which had to be rescued by a maintenance rig. With adjustments, they pulled it off, and one interesting technique they used was to lower the performers to the ground while shooting them, and then reverse the film to create the effect of them soaring into the air. At the time, the old MGM backlot was in such poor condition that it made the perfect place to film the ruins of Washington, D.C. and the quote-unquote outside. The ice cave sequence with the people frozen in ice were actually extras, spray-painted white, who then had to stand perfectly still until each take was complete in order to pull off that scene. It's a very low-tech effect, but it looked pretty good to achieve the level of horror for the moment, and I absolutely loved it. The action scenes were mostly of characters running and occasionally ducking a blaster. However, the fight scene between Francis and Logan was, and still is, a brutal display of savage rage. It was passionate and very, very realistic. Like, if you actually had a real fight with someone, it could be just that manic. And the music that coincided with that was just marvelous, stirring up dramatic tension. Jerry Goldsmith was responsible for the score, and it had some distinct characteristics within the dome of a very computerized digital synth sound, and when on the outside, the music really soars into a booming classical orchestral score. Now for the performances, the casting for this movie is pretty interesting because it influenced the story and the main reason the last day age was raised to 30. There were more complicated issues in hiring a large cast of actors under 21 in the 1970s. As well, most of the cast was clearly over 30 at the time. 33-year-old British actor Michael York was considering turning down the project until a colleague told him he should take the part because it was, quote-unquote, pressing a lot of buttons. I enjoyed Michael in this because he is so expressive and even a bit dramatic in a very elegant way. There is something very soothing about the way he talks and responds to things happening around him in the film. Even though Michael is doing an American accent, it still feels very proper, and it's very easy for the audience members to confuse his character as being British, which you could probably chalk up to the fact that after several generations that it was normal for accents to blend together inside the dome. And I didn't mind it. His performance was one of the highlights in this movie for me. British actor Jenny Agutter, age 24, was chosen, nearly accurate to her age in the film. Jenny played Jessica with a sense of curiosity for adventure and innocence. In an interview, she said she enjoyed making it, but found her costume to be, quote-unquote, embarrassing, which I can completely understand. There really wasn't much to it. Now, originally, Francis was going to be played by 36-year-old William Devane, but he left the movie when the filming schedule clashed with another project. 38-year-old American Richard Jordan was cast as a replacement. But wow, did the project ever get lucky with Jordan? I thought he was amazing as Francis, allowing the audience to feel the menace of his imposition, tenacity, and passion for his cause. Through his performance, Francis is not just an evil, cackling villain. He's sadly a tragically lost soul. Director Michael Anderson asked 54-year-old Peter Ustinov to join the project to play a 100-year-old man after working on 3 prior films together. Peter was wonderful in this charming and whimsical role, improvising much of his dialogue and on occasion quoting Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot. He even mentions the strange term Jellicle cat, made popular by the book, but also too by the Broadway play and movies Cats, released in 1998 and then again in 2019. Michael York takes credit for discovering 1970s beauty icon Farrah Fawcett, aged 28 at the time, as he was playing tennis. He said that she was a quote-unquote blonde vision of delight. She was originally to be an extra, but successfully auditioned for the role of Holly 13, which is actually a character from the novel, contrary to the rumor that the part was created for her. Soon after, she landed the part in Charlie's Angels television show in 1976. Other actors of note were the director's son, Michael Anderson Jr., who played the role of Doc, and within the very dangerous contraption of the character Box was Roscoe Lee Brown, who was not only the operator, but provided the wonderful voice for the character. Now, the enjoyment. One of the authors of the film, William F. Nolan, was very, very unhappy with the movie. I'm not sure what part he didn't like, but he wanted to work on a sequel to make it right. I think that it must have been the message of the film versus the message from the book, or maybe it wrapped things up too neatly at the end and he had a lot more story to tell. A sequel movie might have been possible back then because Logan's Run did very well at the box office and did very well with critics. As well, it shared an Oscar for visual effects at the 49th Academy Awards between this movie and King Kong in 1976. That may shock some people, but the film had the most incredible visuals of its day. Now, this film was growing in popularity, garnering a comic book series that lasted about 7 issues until 1977 with Marvel Comics, and a television series starring Gregory Harrison as Logan 5 and Heather Menzies as Jessica 6, wherein the original writers were called to help the story along. However, once Star Wars hit the scene, the television series was scrapped, and memories of Carousel fled the minds of most science fiction lovers for a while. There were even a few people who saw the similarities between the two movies and thought that Logan's Run was capitalizing off Star Wars' success. The momentum was quelled, but William F. Nolan continued to write sequels. Logan's World in 1977, Logan's Search in 1980, and the ebook Logan's Return in 2001. As well, there were many movies and television shows that were similar after Logan's Run, such as Blade Runner in 1982, which has the term runner in the title, and replicants live only for 4 years, and that's the same number of years that Logan 5 had left to live. A similar theme was used in Ants in 1998, Star Trek Voyager in 1998, Farscape, the episode Taking the Stone in 2000, Frequency in 2000, Imposter in 2001, Minority Report in 2002, In Time in 2011, Cloud Atlas in 2012, and Oblivion in 2013. Warner Brothers began development for a remake in the mid-1990s and has continued to try to get the project off the ground ever since, but it got seriously close in the year 2000, the year 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and in 2015, with rather big names in Hollywood attached each time, but none of those worked out. And that really speaks volumes about Logan's Run and what Michael Anderson and MGM were doing with this property. It's not a perfect movie by any account, but many of the story elements that were problematic for me seem to stem from the book. You know, books have a way of wrapping you up with every tiny little detail for pages and pages, but movies are more detached, and it takes a lot more practical probability to pull the audience in, and I felt this film did just that with the time it had to do it. However, what I believe that Logan's Run really needs is a series again, and not just a movie to tell this vast story that's lurking beneath the surface, but give it the justice it deserves, like what they did with Westworld. There's so many questions about this world to discover, and I think it's time to do just that with a series. This film was just the beginning for me, seeing this fabulous future city as a child, filling my imagination with so much wonder and hope that one day I could live in a place so advanced. The pure, dazzling, theatrical spectacle of the film is what's most memorable, from the elaborate sets, the gorgeous cast, the creative costumes, and the dreamy miniatures. The film is incredibly stylish while taking you on a wild journey of discovery, as if it were symbolizing that Adam and Eve in our Logan 5 and Jessica 6 were leading the people to return to Eden's wilds of nature, while discarding the glories of technology from a system that was ill-conceived. My rating is a 9.1. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it, and if you did, I've got over 100 of these videos, so go on and browse the channel to see more reviews from me like this. Do subscribe if you haven't done so. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.